that you may not hear that are happening in the world that people can connect to, that may ignite something in them to go the extra mile in life. So as CEO, I oversee the operations of everything from the programming to the internship. And then also I work with a national board of directors, which is all across the United States, from California, from Georgia, all the way to the DC area. So WeINSPIRE continues to report weekly. Every Thursday, we release a story. And then we also have a program dedicated, a cohort of individuals that are making a difference in their community. And they're called WeINSPIRE Ambassadors. And we provide programming support for them, leadership development, health and wellness support, and then also mini grants as well. So thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So thank you all. Thanks for the great introduction and again for joining us today. I think that we would all love to know a little bit about your individual career paths, what they looked like, and how you got to be where you are today. And Liz, if you'd like to start us off, that would be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's a great question. So mine is a little varied, as I think many people are, right? You know, a lot of people kind of fall into what they end up doing. So when I graduated college, I took some time to go teach abroad, actually, which is I think quite a common thing. At least it was when I did it. And so I took about 2 years doing that and traveling. And part of why I did that was because I studied international business in school. And something that was important to me was getting experience being international and living in a culture that was different to our own. So I focused some time on that and, you know, got to know different cultures, people, and that type of thing. When I came back, I was interested in event planning. So I actually got into corporate event planning, which is not my cup of tea, but I do have to say it has really honed in my skills. So corporate event planning is all about detail and all about working with people and, you know, perhaps working with some difficult people. So it was a time when I really learned a lot about what my personal skills are. And I think that was what was most important from that experience. So I did that for a few years and, you know, enjoyed bits of it. Part of it wasn't for me. And the part that I identified that wasn't for me was the bit that I wasn't feeling as fulfilled. I think a lot of people can relate to this, but I wasn't necessarily feeling as fulfilled in that position. And, you know, as I want to in my job. So in 2015, I had the opportunity to meet a woman who was founding Hostage US. She came over from the UK to found this organization. And, you know, we got along really well. And that was, of course, part of it. In a small team, you know, getting along well with your counterpart, your coworkers is important. But what I really fell in love with was the mission of helping people. And that is, you know, where I've been for the past over 5 years and where I intend to be for quite some time here on out.
Thank you. Jamarl, would you like to pick it up?
Yeah, I was laughing about that corporate event planning because I used to do event planning and it pays off because it's logistics and everything you do. And at my time at Appalachian, I was a part of the ACT office, the community service office. And I pretty much was like, okay, I see my life going into nonprofit. Upon graduating, I did AmeriCorps Vista for a year, which came in handy too with how to budget your life. But, you know, I did AmeriCorps Vista working at North Carolina Campus Compact. And I decided to move to the capital of nonprofit, Washington, D.C. And, you know, and really dedicating my life from understanding admin, doing admin work, to compliance, to working with the notable organization you all know their cookies for, the Girl Scouts. And, you know, going on to oversee the first housing development program in the district for grandparents raising grandchildren. So my career, I really had a build up until recently. Served in temporary capacity as executive director of a national organization, Jack and Jill. But as I was doing that, just like Liz, I wanted to do more and tap into that entrepreneurship. And I always knew that there were so many stories I was hearing in each role that I served in. And I just wanted to bring to light the good that's going on in the world, the good that we do not get to see daily, and to recognize that. And that's how WeINSPIRE came about 7 years ago. And it has really evolved as an organization with the day-to-day operations because it's rapidly growing. But if it wasn't for all those experiences of the build-up, I think that everyone that's on this panel, our careers are not microwave. They were slowly cooking and they still are cooking. So I just want to get that across, that my resume was really a slow buildup from being the admin, the program assistant, to being over a program that never existed in the district with housing. And I could go on and on with my resume, but it just doesn't speak to the experience of how it is to be an entrepreneur, a CEO of an organization. So I won't take up too much time.
Thank you. And Danielle, would you like to add some to that?
Sure. And I will say I am an event planner in a sense. So I understand what both of you all are talking about. My career path, I always like to tell folks it is anything but a straight line. And most of it, and I will say I'm also fairly early in my career. I'm still only 5 years into my career, and I feel like that's infancy some days. So I will say that, but most of my career path really did start while I was at Appalachian. And that's because I actually transferred to Appalachian from a vocational school. So many years ago, I wanted to be a chef. And that's where I started. And that is not at all where I ended up, right? And I always like to share that with people because it is so different than where I ended up. But because of that, when I got to Appalachian, a lot of what I had to do was figure out what I wanted to do for a career. And I settled in to communication studies and entrepreneurship as my major and my minor. And in addition to that, I got very involved on campus. I was an RA, I was an orientation leader, I interned across campus. I probably lived and breathed on campus for many, many years. And when I look back at that, I realized that I was developing a career that was based in the value of helping others and in the value of empowering others. So similar to what both of you just shared, that's what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to help students succeed at the university. And I got to experience a lot of that through being a leader on campus and through being, just a friend and a colleague of all the other individuals working on campus. And so from that, I went and got my master's in college student affairs administration and decided this is where I'm going to start. This is how I'm going to help people. I'm going to start with students in the university level and then go from there. And I was fortunate that I was, able to get my first job working in a transfer student services office where I worked helping students transition into the university and into their careers. And I loved that. I loved the one-on-one connection. I loved providing them with the empathy and with just being that listening ear of, you're having trouble, let me support you. And while I was I was working in Florida at the time, and while I was there, I decided that I wanted to start broadening my perspective of what helping and supporting people looked like. I had only worked with a student population at that point throughout my entire college career, my graduate work in that first position. And so I decided to take a pretty big swing and looked for new jobs outside of higher education. And that was a big step for me because that's all I had known. And it was quite terrifying, I'll be honest with everyone. But it really paid off. I knew I wanted to be in the DC area, similar to my panelists. And so I looked for jobs in the DC area and found a position at PBS. it was a step in the door because it was a contract role. It was a 1-year role. It was managing a professional development experience and developing a curriculum and a program for that. And it's now 3 years later, and I'm still here. But it took a few more contracts, and then I finally was offered a salaried position. And I like to explain that because sometimes when you're looking for what your career is going to look like, you don't think about what's going to get you in the door. And a contract position got me in the door, and I'm really grateful for that. But I'm still following that value. I help people every single day. I have calls with station staff, and I get to provide them with the help that I was providing students. And so it's really exciting. And I'm really grateful for it. A lot of it is event planning. We do workshops all the time. I have 1 in 2 weeks. So if you need to talk about event planning, give me a call. Always here to talk about it.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And we definitely know that this being part of this nonprofit world and helping others is obviously very important for all of you. But I'd like to know that if there's something specific about your organization's mission or purpose that was part of what drew you to it, for example, having a social impact or sustainability, can you give us some examples of what that commitment of, give us some examples of that commitment and what it means to you? And Jamarl, I'll start off with you if you don't mind.
Yeah. I think that's a great question given with today we had an interview with an individual to do a story on. And I think the thing is like, we really have to be mindful of the audience we want to reach, and we want to reach everyone. So we're always thinking of topics to hit on. If it's on racial injustice, if it's about the environment, there's so many topics out there. So we're trying to make sure, because anything you do in your role, it is connected to data. It is always connected to data. It's always not, you always have to give the why. Why do you do what you do? And we always have to show those deliverables of why we cover the topics that we cover. So we're very intentional with the type of reporting we do. And on top of that, we're a little bit different. Nonprofit journalism is really starting to come on the scene. It's really becoming very popular, that you can have a nonprofit aspect to journalism. So that's something that we're looking at, is like, what is our impact and who do we serve? We tend to serve those, like we have looked at mental health. When you see images, when you hear news, how does it affect your health? How do you internalize it? And taking it from that type of approach in terms of impact. I think Appalachian really prepared me to understand impact when I had to do different reports for the ACT office. So everything we do, the joke is with the interns, they always joke and say, oh, you're always about tracking numbers. And I say, because people need to understand the impact. They need narratives and they need numbers as well. So that is why it causes us to be even more committed to what we're doing. So we're always hitting on those stories to make sure that people understand, what we're doing here.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Liz, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, sure thing. So actually, Jamarl, it was really interesting to hear from you, especially since, I know you've founded your organization, which is different than I worked with the founder who had an organization in the UK that was similar. So I kind of joined a mission rather than, starting it. So it's really interesting to hear from you and your perspective of actually, starting what you felt so strongly about and were so drawn to. It's fantastic. So to answer your question about, the commitment to a certain mission, my interest in hostage affairs, I think, comes fairly natural, probably to most people. It's an interesting topic, of course. Growing up, both my parents were in the CIA, and I had, various dealings with and stories about hostage situations and that type of thing, none of which really formed my passion per se for the mission, but certainly the interest in the organization as I started. Naturally, I'm a, very type of person to be interested in international affairs, political, policy work and that type of thing. So that originally was my interest, but I have to say the passion for the mission really grew as I did the work. I can't say, it was day one type, but it grew and grew as I did the work. And now I, hope I come off as very passionate about the mission, which I am. So I think that's important to share with you all that, you might be interested in a type of, nonprofit sustainability or media communications, that type of thing, and be interested in a organization's mission. And kind of like Danielle was saying, try to get your foot in the door, see if that's the right fit for you. And if that's something that you can really build the passion for, it then becomes, just a fantastic kind of stepping point for you to grow within the organization, which is actually exactly what I did. I started, very low. It was only two of us, but, started as helping to build an organization. So business management type thing. And now, I've grown into the executive director. And I think that, solely has to do with my passion for the mission and being willing to show up and do everything that I can do for the organization. So essentially what I'm trying to say is, the passion for kind of any interest that you have can and should grow as you start to work in that field, especially with things like nonprofits or media relations or communications.
Go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah. So I hate to follow that, Liz, because I agree with everything you were just saying. And I think my response is a combination of what both of you just shared, because I knew, when I look at PBS, the mission is to really educate society. And that is such a big and powerful mission. And as someone who identifies as an educator, because it's what I had done for so long, that just immediately drew me in, right? Not only was it the fact that I loved watching PBS as a child, but it was just the fact that I could now play a role in this big mission and helping society grow in one way or another. And I agree, my kind of passion for that mission has grown substantially over the past 3 years. I mean, when I entered PBS, I didn't know much about it, right? I just knew what I saw on TV. And every day I think I say to one of my colleagues, we work with the best people, because we really do. We work with people who care and who want to make such a difference. And I get to see that in a variety of ways. I see that commitment from the station staff who tell me stories about the digital series that they're creating to help their community learn about, local farm to table opportunities, or the artists that they're highlighting, or just the list goes on. And that's how I get to see our mission live, because sometimes I am a little bit removed from that mission in an administrative role. But I'm grateful for those stories that I get to see and that I get to be a part of. But I agree. I think just knowing that your passion can grow over time is really important. And knowing that when you get your foot in the door, you have a lot to learn, and being open to learning all of that and just diving in, honestly.
Well, thank you. And Danielle, I'm going to stick with you to start this next question off, but thinking about that foot in the door and starting off, what is it that your organization looks for in regards to skills or experiences that new college grads can share?
Sure. This is a big question, and I feel like my answer may not be exactly what you want to hear, but I don't want to sit here and say that there's any cookie cutter type of skills or experiences that we're looking for, because that is not the case. I work with colleagues who have such diverse backgrounds. One of my colleagues used to be a photographer, and now she is the director of our digital products, right? That's such a jump. She didn't get there quickly. She took her time, but I think, the what I'm trying to convey is that there are such a breadth of skills and experiences that you can have coming in the door that are transferable. And that's kind of the component here, is to think about, if you're applying for a job, on my team particularly, right, I'm looking for someone who has passion and excitement for supporting others and for helping others. And so if your resume shows that you've had some of that type of experience, that you've got communication skills, that you're a critical thinker, that you're willing to kind of balance a lot of different things, or you're good at that, that will get you started, right? I can teach you the ins and outs of public media. I can teach you how to plan an event. You don't necessarily need that coming in the door, but you need to have the passion, because I can't teach you that. And so that's, to me, the biggest thing that I look for. So I know that that's not a simple answer, but I think if you can highlight your passion in your cover letter and in your resume, that's going to make you stand out to me than any breadth or depth of skills that you might come with.
Great, thank you. And Jamarl, I see you shaking your head a lot at what Danielle has to say. So would you like to share as well?
It's so funny. I had this conversation with someone the other day about this. So we have an internship program. We've had it for a few years now. We now have our 15th intern, and I'm constantly doing professional development weekly. And the biggest thing, I think, it was hit on so well, is passion. You have to have passion. And I can teach you everything else, but also you have to be a good communicator. And that is something that's very important. Is communication, it's your verbal, it's your nonverbal. When you're doing your interview, you're arriving on time, you have everything set up for your Zoom, you're ready to present yourself. And then when you get into the role, you're asking questions, that's the only way you're going to learn. Don't be afraid. You have every right to be in that space. One thing I want to give a tip on: when you're looking for a role, you are being interviewed, but you are also interviewing that organization as well. We are both in a relationship. We're trying to figure out what works for both of us. Yes, you need a job, you need money, I get it. But if it's not a fit, it will expose itself. And it will expose itself in a way that it may not be, pretty. So you really need to think of it like that, okay, am I fit for it? And am I fit for you? And that would take the pressure off of it. So when you get into that relationship with with that job, then you already come in it very positive. You feel very confident in the role, and you're able to be an effective communicator with your boss, to talk about things in a healthy way. But communicate. Don't do it via text. Do it email, unless your boss prefers text messages. So those are just little things to just be mindful of when you're going in the door. Is that passion and communication.
Thank you. And Liz, what would you have to say about those skills or experiences?
Yeah, I mean, Jamarl, I completely agree with you on all of that, and Danielle as well. I think those are kind of stellar answers. And Danielle, like you were saying, it's quite difficult to share a specific set of experiences that we might be looking for. But I think both my fellow panelists have kind of hit it on the head with the fact that most employers will be looking for, at least nonprofit and this type, are looking for a personality type. And while I understand what you have to apply for a job with is your cover letter and resume, I think to Danielle's point, the cover letter is going to be very important. And through that, you can really share a lot about, what you are, what, your personality is, and what you're, exactly what Jamarl was saying, looking for an employer as well, right? Because like you said, it is a partnership and you need to be able to make sure both sides work. So the personality type that I keep an eye out for really is someone who's willing to go the extra mile. I mean, it's not a hidden fact that Nonprofits are a lot of work, not necessarily the highest salaries, but what you do get from it is, you know, a sense of self-worth and a sense of helping other people. And if that is what you're interested in, I'd highly encourage you to follow that. You know, there's always time down the line to get into a private sector if, you know, circumstances change and you know, need to focus on finances. But, you know, in looking for employees, and we're actually hiring right now. And so I've had this conversation quite a bit with, you know, fellow executive directors of not small nonprofits. The personality type of what, you know, we would love is someone who is a go-getter, really hits the ground running. Danielle is exactly right. And I can teach you exactly how to support a hostage family. I do not expect anyone to know that stepping into the role. That's something I can teach, but what I can't teach, as Danielle and Jamarl have said, is passion and also self-motivation. You know, someone who's able to take that passion and turn it into the next step of it, which is, you know, getting the job done and growing. Something that I, you know, particularly notice in my interns, and we have a similar program as Jamarl does. So we've had, you know, about 15, 20 interns cycle through. And something that I truly appreciate is the willingness to ask for more and ask for projects that will benefit the organization and you as a either intern or, you know, if you're an employee, you as an employee in your professional development. That's something that I, you know, focused on in my career growth, was always asking for more. And, you know, you're in a position, but you have every right in the world to ask for more responsibilities than that position, and your boss will be very happy that you do. So that's one of the kind of personality traits that, you know, I look for, is someone who is willing to say, I have 5 hours free in my week. I need to fill this up and do more for what, you know, the end goal of this organization is. In terms of, you know, concrete experience, I know, you know, you all probably have some experience in internships, maybe some employment experience as well, which is fantastic. For me, it's not necessarily the type, I mean, it can be, but it's not necessarily the type of internship. So it's not, you know, every employee who I have has to work on the Hill for X amount of time or has to work in another nonprofit for X amount of time. It's really about what skills that you gained from the position that you were in, whether it's a, you know, hostess at a restaurant or a, you know, retail manager, whatever, anything under the sun you can think of. I want to see on your resume, and I want to see through your cover letter how you grew in that position, and, you know, what types of skills you gained from that could relate to the job that you're applying for.
Great, thank you. I'd like to take a beat here and see what questions our students have. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask our panelists, please feel free to put an X in the box and I'll call on you to ask your question, or you can type your question in the chat box and we can read it out to the panelists. So I'll give you all a second to think about that question that you may have. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for some of these student questions, can one or all of you talk a little bit about our students making themselves really stand out in this virtual world and how that differs maybe a little bit than what it was like pre-COVID? And I'll open that to whomever wants to jump on it.
I can say a little bit about that. So I think, I guess I'll say something that kind of relates to both, right? So in pre-COVID world, there was a lot of emphasis on networking and making sure that you got your name out there. And I think it's important to say that that hasn't stopped, and it shouldn't stop because we're not able to meet in person. I've, you know, formed relationships with mentors of my own, mentees of my own through completely virtual means. And I think it's important to take advantage of that. You know, at Hostage US, our internship program was never virtual. Now it is. So looking for opportunities across the US now, you know, you can really open up the doors to different opportunities. So I think in that way, it's been quite positive. And I think, there's ways to make yourself, stand out in this job world as well. I know it's challenging. I was looking for a job, the last time the country went through a very challenging economic, downturn. And we all know that's a very, very challenging time, especially for new graduates. So I think when you do apply for jobs, one just really concrete suggestion, and actually I'd be interested to hear Jamarl and Danielle's experience with this, but try to follow up with the job posting and the job, whoever manages the hiring in that company. It really does make you shine a little bit, brighter in the eyes of the hiring manager, especially, personally for me, it does when folks reach back out and say, I'm really interested in the job. I don't know your timeline. Could you give me a little bit more information? So those are just two insights.
I just have a small thing to add. I agree completely with Liz of following up with hiring managers. I think that's a big step, and especially in the nonprofit world, most of us it's a small, world. So it's nice to know that someone is dedicated and caring to that same mission. The one thing that I would really recommend, especially in this virtual time, is taking the opportunity to do informational interviews, to reach out to folks that are in your network, to reach out to folks through LinkedIn, to reach out to us, the three of us on this panel, and take advantage of that, because the first step in the door can somewhat be challenging, and you may not know what that position really entails. And so hearing from somebody who's been in that field or who's maybe held a similar experience can help you tailor the way in which you communicate in your resume or in your cover letter, and help you stand out more, because it will show that you've done your due diligence, right? And it will show that you've really looked into and did the work to understand what it is you will be doing on a day-to-day. And I know that that's a little bit tricky, because it does take a lot of confidence to do that. But I will say, in the Appalachian community, if you reach out to anyone, I would be shocked if they didn't want to talk to you. So definitely feel free to reach out to me. I would love to have conversations with folks. My door's always open, virtually and in person.
I co-sign with it all. Like, I was just like, it's dead on. Those that follow up with me usually get bumped up, because it's a special touch of like, this is what you really want, and you're already dedicated to the mission, even though you may not know a lot about it. And I think also do research. I think one time when I was ED of an organization and I was on a call, like, this person told me everything I've done in my life. Yeah, you went to Appalachian. Yeah, you graduated. You did this, you did that. Of course, for some people it may be stock rich, but it's not. It's really, you really did your research in order to find a way to connect with me. If it be the interview or if it's just a meeting, but do information finding and stay connected to people. When you leave a job, still stay connected to a key person, because you never know when you're going throughout life if you need to go right back there to connect with that person as a reference or information gathering or anything like that. So kudos to the two. That's the best advice. Like, I'm gonna tap into you too. Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so we do have a few questions coming in from students. I'll ask Caitlin Doss if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin. I'm a senior at App State. And thank you guys all for coming to talk to us. I have a question about entrepreneurship. For those of us who are interested in potentially starting our own company or organization, do you have any advice on the first business steps to take? And if you didn't have a financial or business background, where did you start learning?
good question about entrepreneurship, and I know the other panelists can speak to it. It's really being able to step out, and I think there's a false image of entrepreneurship going on right now. It shows you the product, the image. It's not really showing the steps. So you have this idea, and I don't have a finance background. I have a communication background. I don't have a business background either. So what I had to do is I tapped into people, like we we're talking about information gathering. I tapped into individuals, executive directors. How do I go about? Because I had to put together a board of directors, and how do I create the bylaws? So you want to just take those steps bit by bit. But the first thing is the concept, it's the mission, it's the vision. And you need to get a team of people around you that can help you out. You cannot do it alone. Teamwork makes the dream work. Liz, I know you can attest when you're coming with a founder, you really need other eyes. And that's when you need to tap into your Appalachian community too, that and your past professors too that can help you out with that. But entrepreneurship is a process. The nice stuff is what you see on social media. That's really nice. It's cute. You have a logo. Awesome. But behind the scenes, your operations, your finance, get you a good lawyer on your team. You need somebody that has a law degree that can make sure everything is in check. You need to make sure you have someone that is a grassroots person, programmatic. You just want to make sure you have key players at the table. And if you have any more questions, people come to me and ask me all the time, and I'm willing to help because I just want to make sure people understand entrepreneurship. Don't be scared of it, embrace it, but it's a process in order for you to sustain. Because I want your business, your organization to be around for years. So it's best to take baby steps. So that's my recommendation. I could write a Bible on entrepreneurship. So.
Yeah, thank you.
And actually, Caitlin, I'll just say, from my experience, I obviously, I know I was different side of it. So it was the founder and I started helping her set up. So Jamarl was the exact opposite side. I was the finance, the business, finding the legal, that type of thing, which is kind of my cup of tea. But so I would just completely agree with what Jamarl said, is lean on other people. You have to network and ask other people what they did. I mean, there's no sense of, reinventing the wheel, whatever that phrase is, to get you where you are. I lean very, very heavily on other EDs in small organizations. Being an entrepreneur, being a leader in any, I think, position can be lonely. And, there's other people who are there who are in that position like you. Find them and just chat with them, talk with them, discuss your challenges and ideas for next steps. I saw somebody wrote in the chat, I think Dan, that networking, it really is intimidating, but once you start doing it and reaching out to people, you realize how many people are willing to share what they know. And it really gives them a boost too, frankly. When people reach out to me and ask me about how to do, XYZ or how we did it, it makes me feel good too, right? Because I'm helping someone. So don't ever think of it as being, a pest or, being a bit of an annoyance to someone when you ask them for help or advice. It's really not. It's a great way of sharing, and it oftentimes helps them think through issues that they're having as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so we have another question from Sarah Hunter. So Sarah, I'll ask you to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and turn my camera on. I'm on campus, so I've got my mask on, but mine's more of a general question. So I'm graduating in May, and so I just wanted to get your insights and tips into how you get more out of that student mentality and into the professional workplace mentality. I know I'm struggling with it just because being a student, this is what I've known the past 4 years, and how you set yourself up for success.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'm actually going to toss this to Danielle because I know she and I were talking about how it felt like we were still students, even though it's been a minute. So Danielle, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I still feel like some days I'm trying to find that balance, or I like to pretend that I am. No, I think that's a really good question. And I think a lot of it actually will come pretty intuitively. You might not expect it, but as you're starting the search, right? As you're looking at jobs and as you're having conversations with hiring managers and as you're participating in interviews, you'll start to see how on the other side of the table, how they're acting towards you. And that is where you can start to learn, one, what it is you might want to be as a professional and what you might not, right? Because sometimes they're not always the level to which you're hoping to be quite yet. So that those are really good learning experiences. But I also think, put a little bit more faith in yourself is my biggest statement to everyone here, because everyone has done this transition. We've all gone from student to professional, and your first year in your first position is such a huge learning experience. And don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to ask for clarification. That's the biggest thing I would say is when you enter the door, when you get your first job, when you're going to your HR orientation, when you're meeting your colleagues, continually ask questions, because that's how I learned. That's how I got to the place that I am. And, there are plenty of things that I still don't know. And there are plenty of things that I'm still asking questions about. But, I've been a manager now for a year. I'm still learning what that means. I'm still asking my manager, how do I do this better? Or how should I be doing this? So don't put so much pressure on yourself to be the perfect professional outside the gate, but start thinking about what it is you want to portray as a professional. And there will be days where you won't hit on the mark, and you'll learn from that, and you'll move on, and you'll go to the next day, and it'll just keep going. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an answer. But yeah, it's a hard process. I won't sugarcoat that.
Thank you.
Liz or Jamarl, do either of you have some other tips or tricks?
Yeah, so my thoughts on that are actually that you probably already have some experience of it as a student, right? Because you act differently towards your classmates than you do to your professors, to your counselors, and that type of thing. So I think if you think about it in that manner, you can start to think of how you might interact with those levels of folks in a position. I think for me, my opening stance was always to be kind of extremely professional. And I don't necessarily recommend that. Sometimes it makes you look rigid and, it's as if you can't kind of let your walls down. So I definitely don't recommend going all the way towards that way. But I think exactly what Danielle was saying is, know your audience, right? So if you're in a interview, of course, you should probably be at your utmost professional at the starting point. If things get a little bit more lax, of course, go with the flow of the interview. But I think, what you've experienced in school and probably in life is that you have to interact with people differently depending on who they are. So I think that question is really insightful, actually. And I think it's something that people don't have a self-awareness to think about before they go into the job experience. So I think even just asking that is already putting your thoughts into the right place. So knowing how you might act to different kind of stakeholders within the organization is really important. We've had issues with that in the past, and I can say it's caused a lot of issues. So to be thinking about that right now is really important, and a great question.
Great, thank you. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I'd like to wrap us up with 2 more student questions that we have. So Bailey Long, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I'm actually going the other way around right now. I've been in the corporate world for 5 years, and I'm trying to transition back into a student mindset. And it's just as challenging for me as it was to go the other way. But I first want to say thank you for speaking to us today, because I wasn't sure what to expect when I signed up, and I'm really excited about the conversations I'm hearing. I feel like it's what I've been missing in the corporate world. But anyway, my question is more about the contrast between maybe large corporate and nonprofit, in being that I've found that the vision of our corporate, I worked for VF Corporation, and the vision of our company was very clear. We had it on everything, but I didn't feel like it translated down to the actual individual level. And then going past that, I always had lots of ideas that I might have wanted to try, and we always had these schedules and strict timelines and deadlines we had to be under, and I think that's why I kind of got burnt out very quickly. But I think, or I wonder if it's easier in a nonprofit setting to have an inspiration or a passion and kind of rabbit trail down that for a little while and see where it goes. Is there opportunities more for that in that arena than there is in the more rigid corporate setting?
I can speak on it real quick. I've always been a nonprofit, but I've worked with corporations, and I will say it just depends. I've worked very closely in the past with Capital One, and Capital One really, and the Boeing company, and they really had this initiative to give back to the community. They wanted their employees to be very involved in the work, you know, and in the vision. So I think it just really depends on the corporation. But I will say with nonprofit, it's more Philly, you know, because it's like passion. And it's so interesting you say that. I'll be completely transparent. A board member and I, he's corporate, I'm nonprofit. We were going back and forth over how something was read in the bylaws. He was going off his background in corporate. I was going off my background in nonprofit. And I was like, in nonprofit, this is how we do best practices. You know, it's not as rigid, you know, it's not as black and white. We have to move in so many different gray areas, which can be fun, and sometimes it can be frustrating how you view it. Because nonprofits are just, you're always innovative, you're always trying to figure out the next steps. You know, even I can bet with PBS, you know, I love PBS, I'm a fan, low key, I'm a big fan, but they're still trying to figure out, how do we do marketing? We all know, you know, if you donate to us today, you know, your life is a little different compared if I go to Capital One. I used to joke with them when I would go to their building. I used to be like, oh, this is real nice. You have a cafeteria. Life is a little different. So I think it's really more case by case from my experience with working with corporate. So.
I just wanted to add one thing, because although PBS, we are a nonprofit, we're a fairly big company. And so there are days where it does feel like a corporate company. And but I say that because to your question, Bailey, that even in PBS, where, you know, I work with 500 people, those areas that you're looking for of finding inspiration and brainstorming and whatnot, those are possible. I mean, I constantly am looking for new ideas with my team, and we're constantly looking for new projects or new ideas. We may not be able to do them tomorrow. We may not even be able to do them this year, but as long as we're thinking about them and we know, you know, maybe 2 years from now, this is a project that will really help us and meet this need. So I would say, you know, for us particularly, yes, that is something that we actually hope for, and what we look for is that folks are looking for the new thing or for the next thing, and they're constantly willing to be open to doing that work. So that's a great question to be thinking about now, for sure.
Thank you. And Indiana, I want to give you the opportunity to be able to ask your question as well. So please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, I was wondering, how do you see older people that are embracing new careers? Like, it's my case. I feel really fortunate, privileged of being a part of the Sustainable Development Department at Appalachian State University. But you can imagine when I arrived there, everybody was like, oh, you're the Spanish professor. nobody could understand what I was doing there. And the thing is that I come from the sustainable tourism field. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own company. Actually, I work for the Jamaica Tourism Board, and social media is very important because I had to close my office in Venezuela. And when I moved to the States, Facebook was starting. And that's how I could get a hold on all my contacts and you know, my database from Latin America, I think is one of the best ones. And but I am ready to transition. I live here. I don't live in the Caribbean anymore, and I'm not a travel writer anymore. That's for sure. And but I wonder how the market will see me. You know, I'm an immigrant. I have a lot of experience. I'm dying to work with communities, with people. I'm a reporter, but do I really have an opportunity here, do you think?
So I would love to speak to that. And yes, you definitely do. I mean, I think something that's really interesting to me, and it always has been, are people who are passionate enough to change careers. Danielle was talking about, you know, it is scary, and it was scary for her. And look at how well it worked out for her to change career and now grow in her position and at PBS and be a leader there. So I think the key, you know, thing that I would say look out for is an employer who takes your courage to jump to a, you know, different experience as a positive, rather than say, you know, am I going to be, am I gonna, you know, be able to get my foot in the door? Say, you know, if somebody doesn't want me to put my foot in their door, well, you know, moving on to the next person who is, and really take that as a sign that it's an employer who will value your skills and your background, and look at your experience as something that, you know, will be valuable and substantial to their organization.
I was just gonna echo what Liz said, because I was a product of that, and I think that I was lucky. I found an employer who looked at my resume and saw, you know, okay, your experiences don't directly correlate to what we do in public media, but I can see the passion and I can see the drive, and so I think it really does, you know, it's helpful to find that person and find that company. And I also would say, you know, look for opportunities that aren't expected. You know, look for, like I started looking for jobs and was thinking, okay, I need to find that perfect job. I need to find that salary that's going to make me feel comfortable and I'm able to live off of and whatnot. And that's important. It's very important. But when you're transitioning into a new career, you also have to recognize that I might have to start at a place where I'm a little bit lower than I was before. And that's what I did. I started at at that contractor level and worked my way up. And so I would encourage that too, to think about other opportunities if it's something that you are financially able to do in that sense. But yeah, I would say there's definitely going to be opportunities out there for you. Definitely.
Wow, what an awesome hour we just spent together. I just want to take a moment and thank all the students for their participation. I think you had some great questions. And panelists, thank you so much for being here with you and your insight and your willingness to network and chat with our students and help them figure out what that next step can be. So I'm going to applaud everyone. Thank you so much. If you have questions, students, for us afterwards, please feel free to reach out to myself, Susan, or Deanne, and we can connect you with any or all of the panelists if you would like, or answer questions that you may have in regards to those next steps in your career readiness. So thank you all.
Thank you, Danny, Liz, and Jamarl. It's great to have you with us this afternoon. And all the students, thank you for being here and making time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much. It was great.
Yeah.
Also, you can feel free to give the attendees my email address if that could be helpful for them. I know Danny has mentioned connecting with her as well. So.
Yeah,
Great,
yeah,
thank
y'all
you.
were awesome. I mean, I was just, yeah, just soaking it all in, and such great, I mean, just great nuggets of wisdom that you had to share. Thank you so much. We're so lucky. We're so lucky to have such a network of people willing to spend their time with us.
Definitely. It's good to be on the panel with you. I was making notes. I was like, yes, that's true. Yes, I'm telling the interns that, you know, and then also it was pretty cool, Liz, to hear the perspective of the executive director versus the founder. And because that's something we're trying to look at in the future. So thank you for that perspective. And then
I have a
Danielle
lot
will
more